Hey, this is Val from Crisp. So the Crisp RTM API, standing for Real-Time API, lets you receive events happening in your Crisp website in real time. The RTM API provides you with any event relating to your inbox and CRM on Crisp. You can hook to those events to react. For instance, if you receive a message from someone on the chat box, you can answer to this message from the REST API. You can also hook to contact events in order to synchronize contact data to your internal systems. So RTM events and webhooks are used for the same purpose. With webhooks, you require a server on your end to receive webhooks from us. With RTM events, on the contrary, your application connects to our servers, so you do not need to configure an inbound server to receive events from Crisp, which in some situations is simpler. As well, if you receive a lot of events, we recommend that you use RTM events over webhooks. So Crisp provides a WebSocket server that you can connect to receive events. So Crisp provides convenience libraries that you can use to start receiving RTM API events in a matter of a few lines of code. So the libraries is the exact same as the REST API libraries, and you can actually use the same libraries to do both REST API and RTM APIs. So for instance, if I'm only interested in the message received on the chat box, I will only subscribe to an event called message send. And I will not receive all other events from my team because it's useless in my use case. Same ways as you do with the REST API, to connect to the RTM API, you need a token to authenticate. The token is the same from the RTM and the REST API, so you can basically reuse your existing REST API tokens, which you likely already have, in the same code. So I will show you how to create a plugin on the marketplace to obtain your tokens. And as well, I will show you a code example which will connect to the RTM API and start receiving a message from users. So let's get started. So I prepared an example code here, which is Node.js, JavaScript, and which depends on the Crisp API libraries that Crisp provides. So the Crisp API library actually lets you access the RTM API and the REST API in the same package. Okay, so first you can see that I need to have a website ID configured and my token identifier and key. So the website ID is basically my website on Crisp. So I simply need to go to Crisp, here, to settings, website settings, my website, which is called Acme here, setup instructions, and in the website ID category, I just need to copy my website ID. Then I go back to my code editor, and I paste my website ID here. Okay, so now we need to configure a token identifier and key. So this is basically what I get from the marketplace when I create a new plugin. So in this case, since this is a private plugin for my business, I will just create a new private plugin, continue with the type. So let's call it RTM API demo. Okay, so description will be kind of the same. Okay, create plugin. And it's providing me with a development token immediately. So I just can copy it here, the identifier, and as well the key. So since we configured the token identifier and key, the plugin should actually work straight away. So let's just first review the code. So first off, I need to require the Crisp API and build a new Crisp client. As well, I need to make sure that the library is installed. So I just should call npm install, and that's done. Okay, so in my code, I have define a function which basically just replies with a message to the target session on Crisp. So this is a code that uses a REST API because we still need to respond to messages. The RTM API part, on the other hand, is here. So the RTM API part just lets you be notified of new events occurring on your team. It doesn't let you write or read data, it just pushes new events to you. So the way I can subscribe to events is with the on function here. So it's basically you put on the text namespace of the event you need to subscribe to, and then the handler function, which takes the event payload as a parameter. So here I've defined two events, so message send. So basically when anyone will send a message from the chat box, email, and stuff, I will get notified here. On the second hand, I also created like a people profile created hook, which will be sent whenever a new CRM contact is created in Crisp. So you can see the list of available events on the Crisp API wrapper README. So if you scroll down to the bottom, there is a list of all events you can subscribe to. So for instance, for message, my event is here. Okay, so now let's open a terminal and run the app. So I just need to hit node.index.js, execute it. Okay, so it authenticated and it's now waiting for events on my Crisp website. So let's just create some events. So I just installed my chat box on the page here. So I can just open it and send a message here. Hey! Alright, so I just received a reply here. So this reply actually came from my script. So the script told got event, message sent. So we got notified of the event coming from the chat box. So you can see it has a session ID, which is the chat session ID, the website ID, which is my website ID, and a content, which is hey, which is the message I sent. So I got a reply, hey, thanks for the message, which is actually defined here and sent through the REST API. So you see, you can actually use both the RTM API and the REST API at the same time to create chatbots, like complex scenarios and stuff like that. So you can build interesting stuff by mixing the REST API and the RTM API. Using solely the RTM API without the REST API can be useful if you just want to retrieve data from Crisp and then synchronize it to some external system. But in this case, you will probably be better off using webhooks. For instance, in this case, a webhook would also nicely work. Okay, so now we'll just try out the second part of the demo, which is get notified of any CRM contacts, which gets created on Crisp. So I just will create a new contact here. Okay, add contact, so the contact got created. And boom, I got notified here of the new contact. So I can synchronize this email address, for instance, in my own internal CRM system or any other system. So the RTM API is easy to use with our libraries. If, however, you would like to integrate a custom programming language to the RTM API, you still can do that. You just need to implement some more authentication and custom protocol before that, which is all explained in our documentation. So if you go to the authentication category of RTM API, we explain the authentication payload protocol, as well as where you should connect to when you implement the RTM API here. So please note that the RTM API speaks socket IO. So typically it's a system used with JavaScript libraries, but you can also easily implement it in any programming language, such as Java, Go, Rust, and stuff like that. Whenever connecting to the RTM API using your custom system, the first payload that needs to be sent is the authentication payload. You will not start receiving events before sending this authentication payload. If the authentication you submitted is valid, the server will reply and acknowledge it's valid, and then events will start flowing. The RTM API, as you saw, is super easy to implement in your JavaScript code. Note that we also have an official Golang library which you can use to do the same. Also note that here we only used a development token. Whenever pushing your app into production, you will need to request a production token from a marketplace. So production tokens can be easily requested on the marketplace by first defining all the kind of data you need to access, which are called scopes. So for instance, if you want to get notified with the RTM API of incoming messages, you will need a scope with message, allowing to fetch you a list of message. So scopes are shared between the REST API and the RTM API. So whenever you have the scope allowing you to read messages, you will be able to fetch past messages using the REST API, as well as receive new messages from the RTM API. So if you're wondering which scopes you need to use with the RTM API for receiving an event, you can go to the docs, plugins, token scope, and the list of scopes are here. So each scope is associated with a REST API route, but as well with the associated RTM API events. So if I want to receive messages, for instance, in a conversation, I will need this scope, website, conversation, messages. So this scope is associated with the send a message in conversation route. But as well, it is associated with get a message in conversation, update message in conversation. So each scope actually can be associated with multiple resources on the REST API, and as well multiple events on the RTM API. So this video has shown you how easy it is to integrate with the Crisp RTM API. So we cannot wait to see what you're going to build with the RTM API and the Crisp REST API.